The educational rights recovery movement had an important role in the overall anti-Christian movement in the 1920s. You see, besides nationalist educators, numerous GMD officials and intellectuals were also strong advocates of the educational rights recovery movement. Their officials increasingly viewed Christianity as unessential to Western civilization after the introduction of new ideas and new developments in sciences at the beginning of the 20th century. For the advocates of the educational rights recovery movement, taking the educational rights back from the mission schools was not only a nationalist action, but it was also intended to save China's future generation from superstition and backwardness. As you can imagine, this presented a direct challenge to the growth of Christianity in China, since education and medicine had been the two primary avenues through which the Protestant missionaries had been able to evangelize the Chinese people in a society resistant to direct proselytism. Eventually, numerous measures were put forth by the anti-Christian advocates. 3 of them were vital to the lives of the mission schools. First, there was a demand that the government not cooperate with the Christian churches. Another was a request that the government establish a special institution to recover educational rights. And finally, a proposal that pushed the government to pass related laws and to ban church schools. These appeals became louder and wider, especially following the May 30th incident. The May 30th incident was a notorious massacre in which 11 Chinese student protesters were killed by the British constables in Shanghai in 1925, resulting in riots in many church schools. After the May 30th incident, the anti-Christian movement continued to grow along with a new slogan of anti-imperialism. And following these events, the educational rights recovery movement developed quickly across the nation. In June 1925, the 7th National Conference of the Students' Union passed an anti-Christian resolution stating that, quote, every province should have a special committee for the educational rights recovery movement, unquote. The movement for recovering educational rights kept getting stronger and stronger. Later, on November 16, 1925, the Ministry of Education of the Beijing government enacted stringent regulations on schools established by foreigners. For example, it was ordered that, quote, the principal of the school should be Chinese. If the present principal is a foreigner, there must be a Chinese vice principal who will be responsible for the application for recognition, unquote. The regulations also said that religious courses should not be required in the curriculum, and that schools should not aim at propagating religion. A year later, in November 1926, the Guangdong nationalist government promulgated another set of regulations, which were equally tough on mission schools. The new regulations stipulated that, quote, schools founded by foreigners or by churches were under the supervision and guidance of government educational administrations. Directors of private schools should not be foreigners. No religious teaching should be compulsory, etc., unquote. Notice the emphasis on excluding foreigners and limiting religious instruction. No mandatory religious teaching meant less opportunity for converting Chinese students. These regulations reflected the growing nationalism in China in this period, which led in turn to nationalist government policies that were extremely detrimental to the Christian movement in China.